So beautiful.
Oh my gosh. Gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Oh, I love it. So, welcome back, everyone, to What's the Tea with ACP, where we are chatting with artists. It's a live web series where we feature artists and they chat with us about what's going on in their lives, their art, and their social experiences. So, today we have some amazing, amazing guests. They are all composers and brilliant in their own rights and ways. And we're going to start off today with Laura Kaminsky. So let me give you a little bit of info about Laura. So Laura is cited in the Washington Post as one of the top 35 female composers in classical music. Laura is frequently frequently addresses critical social and political issues in her work, including sustainability, war, and human rights. She possesses an ear for the new and interesting, and her music is full of fire as well as ice, contrasting dissonance and violence with tonal beauty and meditative reflection. It's strong stuff, says the American Record Guide. Her first opera as one, beautiful work, with co-librettists Mark Campbell and Kimberly Reed, is the most produced contemporary opera in North America since the 2016-2017 season, with close to 40 productions to its credit. That is amazing. Please welcome Laura Kaminsky.
Hi, it's so great to be here.
Hello, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Delighted.
Yes.
Our next guest is Jorge Sosa. Jorge is a Mexican-born composer and sound artist currently residing in New York. In October 2020, Jorge will be premiering Alice in the Pandemic, a new telematic opera commissioned by Whitesnake Projects, written specifically for online remote collaboration. Jorge's first fully staged opera, I Am a Dreamer Who No Longer Dreams, which is the piece you heard at the beginning, was commissioned and premiered in Boston in 2019 by Whitesnake Projects. Jorge has been commissioned by Little Orchestra Society to write The Monarch of Uxmal, a new work for orchestra and narrator with premiere scheduled for 2021. Jorge is currently developing a new puppet opera, Monkey, commissioned by Whitesnake Projects as well. Monkey will receive a workshop performance in 2020 and is scheduled to be premiered in 2021 in Boston. Jorge has also recently been commissioned by American Lyric Theater to develop the new opera The Opposable Thumb with libretto by Julian Crouch, with a premiere date of 2022. Please welcome Jorge Sosa.
Everyone.
Hello,
Hi.
So good to be here. Thanks for the invite. And hi, Laura. Just amazing to share this time with such amazing artists. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome. Last but certainly not least, we have Miss Jasmine Barnes. She's a promising young composer and vocalist who has performed and has had her music performed worldwide. She's a multifaceted composer who embraces any writing style of music with various instrumentation and specializes in writing for the voice. She proved her musical prowess in her debut composition concert entitled Reality, Race, and Religion in 2018 at the Gillum Concert Hall of the Carl J. Murphy Fine Arts Center, which featured many notable singers, conductors, and ensemble members. Ms. Barnes was the first composition major of the Morgan State University, thus hosting the first composition recital, setting the bar high for those to follow. And one last thing, she definitely wanted to include this in here, and that she is the product of the Baltimore City public school system and finds it important to note that her family never had to pay a dime for her arts education. She truly believes it was the free services of art in various forms from passionate artists that shaped her into who she is. If not for those offerings, she may have very well not be the artist she is. Please welcome Jasmine Barnes.
Yay, Jasmine.
Hey.
Welcome.
Yay.
Ah,
Oh, wait.
there we go. You're good. Hello.
Hi, happy to be here with all of you. You guys
We're
are
so happy to have you. So happy to have you. Thank you all so much for coming and being a part of our little project of What's the Tea with ACP. So for this episode, we are discussing viability. So viability, as defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is the quality or state of being viable, such as the ability to live, grow, and develop, the ability to function adequately, or the ability to succeed or be sustained. And we asked the composers beforehand to kind of think about some questions that they might have for other composers at this time. And it seemed that the overarching theme was this theme of viability. How viable are the arts? How viable is their contribution to the arts, especially in this time period right now? So I'm going to hand it over to Michael to introduce our first question.
Yeah, I think as we asked our guests to come up with questions, we ran into this common theme. But another common theme was just how many questions that, being in this time brings up. So we kind of had to narrow it down so we could fit within our time frame. But the first question is one from Jorge. And Jorge, if you don't mind, I'm going to pull up the question on the screen, and would you mind asking it to our guests?
Sure. Let me remind myself what it is that I asked. So how can we convince decision makers to fund new works that address the needs of our artistic community in terms of diversity, vision, and inclusion? And how can we as composers best develop these works?
Very, very intense question. An awesome question. So with this, we tend to open it up to the other people who asked the question, or the other composers, right, who the question didn't come from. And then we, as the hosts, may also chime in a little bit. And then we're going to round the question back to you, Jorge, to answer in your own way of what you think we can do for that as well. So let's start with, who does anyone want to start? Laura, Jasmine? I'll give you preference.
Okay. Okay, I'll start. Okay.
Good.
So, okay, how can we convince decision makers to fund new works that address the needs of our artistic community in terms? Okay, so by and large, so I don't know if my answer is an answer per se. I can speak to it though. A lot of companies don't understand the elitism that happens within companies. And so what happens is these wonderful works that may or may not reflect the community that it's in often doesn't reach the community that it's supposed to be helping or supporting. And I think part of this, they probably don't want to hear this, but part of this I think comes with some equity, some like price changing, some things that will allow more people to be able to enjoy the spaces and the works that are being presented, and more accessibility to it as well. So like right now we're online, and okay, for instance, Hamilton was just released on Disney Plus. Like that allowed a lot of people who were never able to go see it because it costs money to buy flights, it costs money to buy the tickets, it costs money for a hotel in New York, and it costs a lot, honey. And okay, and all these things add up. And so a lot of people that the community that was served well is not able to go see it. So I think a part of that has to do with either going to the communities to increase the participation of the community, but also as far as composers and us developing these works, we have to keep these communities in mind when we are, writing them. So like, for instance, my friend and I, Joshua, we're writing an opera right now. But our reason for writing it is because generally we're tired of operas that feature Black people only about like these stereotypes or about, the struggle of, we wanted it to be like an actual story, like a love story or a love story or a community story, something that actually is just storytelling, which is very common in Africa. And so we're used to storytelling, but, and we don't see that reflected on the stage. So we said, okay, so we want to learn it. We want to learn it before we write it. So we've been communicating with different people that either are what's the word I'm trying to come up with? Okay. We're just trying to, discuss with different people about like the area. So we know, and that we're approaching the opera correctly. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm like nervous in my answer for some reason. But But
So basically, like trying to make sure that the opera reflects the community in which you're talking about, or whatever experience that's happening within the opera, reaching out to those people to make sure that the experience is genuine and authentic, and not a caricature of what it might be.
Right. And also having a way inviting them, and not just, oh, we're going to write an opera about this particular group, but we won't ever bring it to them, and they'll never see it. Like, it's just like, it's kind of unfair. So we see that often with a lot of larger companies. They want the dollar from a lot of people that don't look like the people they're writing for. So yeah.
Awesome.
Great.
I'm gonna toss it over to Laura.
Wow. I have to say, Jasmine, you touched on a lot of things. And in hearing your bio, I was like, yeah, like I'm a product of the New York City public school system. And also my graduate degree was through the City University system in New York. And I went to school, high school and graduate school in Harlem, and in a broken down building that was it was the same school that Lin-Manuel Miranda went to, I think. But it's an art school, and it was public education. So I think that the conversation, all the points you made are dead on, but I think that there's a piece of the conversation that gets left out by our side of the equation, because we're the artists. We make art. We think everybody's going to want it. The problem is we have now gone through probably almost maybe two generations worth of kids who don't get arts education in school. So when the big companies say, well, we could do a community outreach program and drop in, there's no context for those kids to appreciate it because they don't know what it is. And then when people say that the arts are expensive and elitist, I'm sorry, you can go to an opera for less than you can go to a basketball game. So, the institutions have done a disservice in terms of that some of that elitism has pushed people away, but the educational system has done this greatest disservice because we have not given people an entry point. So why would they even think they want something that they don't even know is there? And if they do know it's there, they haven't been given the clue, the cues of how to enter into that artistic experience. I mean, when I was a kid in the public schools, there was an amazing program that brought artists into the schools. And one of the transformative experiences of my life was when Baba Olatunji, who was an incredible West African musician, was living in New York, and he was made resident artist for the New York Public School System. And he and his wife came to my fourth or fifth grade classroom with their drums, with their kente cloth. We cooked meals together. We learned the rhythms. We sang together. There was a citywide contest to design a poster for his Carnegie Hall debut, and I was one of the ones who won when I thought I was going to be a visual artist. And I got to go to that performance, and he was a real person, and I had a close-up introduction to the power of African rhythm and community storytelling, music making, and it didn't end up a shock, but I ended up living in West Africa for over a year as an adult. And I think that seed was planted when I had that encounter with that artist. So some of the issues of the presenting institutions are how to grapple with this vacuum, this big empty place of not giving the arts to all of the youth. We know we'll love it. We know that. We give people art, they respond. And if we haven't given those seeds, planted those seeds, how do we expect there to be audiences? And so then all of these vicious cycles of things that don't work continue. So there's a lot of conversations here. I mean, clearly the stories that get told have to be relevant and beautiful and meaningful. And in terms of what you were talking about, you want to be able to tell a beautiful love story about people from the Black community. You don't want to have a maid or a drug addict or a drug dealer, because those are bad tropes, right? And we have to fix all of those stories, and we have to make them heroes for the next generation of artists to perform and audiences to take in. I think I kind of went roundabout, but I see this issue from both sides.
Yeah. So bringing in arts education as well as artistic content to format a future where it's people want to go and experience the opera, not just putting it on their plate, trying to feed it to them. Right. Love that. What about you, Jorge?
Oh, y'all covered everything. Yeah, I mean, I agree with with everything you've said. As I'm also an educator, and I've been an educator for for many years, even before I came to the U.S. So the importance of arts education cannot be underestimated. And I come from a educational system that did not support the arts in the same way, and I think that it's one of the great disservices to Mexican society. So, and not to say that there aren't options. There are certainly options, but they tend to be few and very localized, and with the idea of sort of taking kids very early in their lives and just channeling them, and and the system works well for some, but it also leaves a lot of people out. And in the United States, there are different reasons why people get left out, because I remember living in Kansas City, and we had a composers in the school program where we would go once a week to the same schools, and basically we talked about music and composition, and depending on the teachers, we sometimes took over the string orchestra, or sometimes we just talked, and we got to go to the very wealthy districts that had orchestras and two orchestras and bands and choirs and a Starbucks on campus, and and then there was the other district that where kids had to be brought in buses because they simply did not have not even the rooms, not even the space to do the work. And working with both these populations and learning from them, and it was very, very eye-opening as to the disparities that are within just a few miles of each other. So that is something that needs to be addressed. Inequality is that's another T, I guess, that for another
exactly.
If I could jump in with something that sort of goes back to something that each of you guys said, which is, part of it also is because we haven't created this educational system that now gives every kid access to the arts so that they want to be part of it and they understand it and they're excited about it. There's also, on the side of the performing and presenting institutions, this sense that they can get, and I think for many it's genuine. They really do believe in community involvement and engagement and reaching new audiences. The problem is that they'll do the project about the local X community, and they'll work with that community, and then they go and do a different project and they forget about that community. So that community doesn't feel like it's really for them, that it was, that was tokenism or educational specific to my cultural group or my religious group or whatever. And then there's the next project that comes along that's about a different socio political, ethnic, religious group. And so all that effort and all that support goes to reaching those people. And then that first group who got an exciting taste of things doesn't get invited back. How do you build an audience? I mean, if you're from one ethnic group and there's an opera, say, that tells the story of the plight of your group, and it's a human story, it's specific to your group, but it's a universal story, and those characters in that story are telling truths, why wouldn't I want to then go and see another opera that's about a different group that has equally relevant human stories, love stories, stories of challenge, stories of dishonesty and deceit? That is not my ethnic group or your ethnic group. It's a different one, but those are human stories told through a different lens. Why wouldn't I come back? So I think the institutions have to do better at continuing their outreach and making the assumption that somebody's only going to be interested if it looks and smells exactly like them is kind of a disservice to all of us as human beings. Right?
I agree, and
there's a lot of work to be done. It's exciting. I mean, this is an exciting time. I mean, if anything, the shutting of all of our public spaces for performance has made us really think about, what do we do this for? Who do we do it for? Why do we do it? And if those 2 hours in a theater are so precious that people are kind of willing to die to do it now, what's the content on the stage? It's that important. So, this has been a kind of, in the tragedy of all of this, it's also a beautiful opportunity.
Wow. Wow.
I want just to touch on a couple of points that Laura made. And for me, one of the key issues is that the classical arts, opera, specifically opera, it's on an unbalanced diet. I cannot think of another art, successful art enterprises that sustain themselves from museum pieces, where the balance between the tradition and the new work is so off balance. Imagine a movie industry that only played Singing in the Rain, which I love. It's a great, I sing it with my boy all the time. But and it's not that you can't see Singing in the Rain. There are opportunities to see Singing in the Rain or Casablanca or the classic movies, but they rely on the new product and they rely on telling new stories, and that's how you can see that transformation in the storytelling. And so and same with the non-classical music industry. It doesn't rely, although it's changing now. Actually, I think there is like a classic pop music, classic rock, classic nostalgia circuit that is gaining momentum, which is really interesting to me to see. All these musicians who are getting old, but they keep the touring going. So that's I think kind of new. But so I think that if you switch that balance, if you really trust the new artists to bring voice to the people, we would make more progress. I think that there is. The other thing I wanted to mention is I think there is room for sort of the stories of specific ethnic or cultural groups where we unpack some of our own past and our own issues that have marked our communities. Drug trafficking, for us, we live with it. My family lives with it. I grew up with it. We grew up in that environment, and it's over present violence, drug violence, gun violence. So it is important for us to tell those stories as well. And in doing so, yes, sometimes we perpetuate certain stigmas and certain tropes. But I think that the industry will go through a process similar to what happened in the movies. When you think about the Latino movies, the Chicano cinema of the 70s, of the 60s, they were far more stereotypical, but it needed to be said and it needed to be done. so that you could move into the 21st century and have a real wealth of stories that you can find in Latin American cinema, which you oftentimes don't get in the in the movie theaters in the United States. So I think the more stories you tell, the more room there is to explore different facets of who we are as human beings.
Wow. Yeah. Totally. Totally. Oh.
Something like with the way that you worded the question, I know we should probably move on to the next one soon. But I thought it was interesting that you used the word convince. How can we convince decision makers? And I think that seems like such a terrible position, that we have to convince these people that it's worth caring about diversity, vision, and inclusion. So, I mean, I think that like there's a much bigger problem there. Like, yes, we do need to convince them, but why is that the case? Why are there people in positions of power that don't already care about these things? I think we know why, but how do we change that?
So may I just jump in? And I'm answering this. I'm an oddity in a way, because I spent many years as a presenter, producer, running theaters. So I know that other side, and I was always at a war with myself as an artist and with the institutions. But I was I fought for what I believed was right. I think that some of the issues are every presenting institution has its own culture and its own history. So the idea of changing it is kind of scary. And it's such a fragile model because it's an economically unsustainable model, the way we do the arts in this country. There isn't the economics make no sense. And the amount that has to be raised and the dependency on funders puts a lot of strain and stress on that conversation. And I can just, I'm not going to mention where, but after As One, which was my first opera, premiered and became pretty much a commodity that people were interested in. And Mark and Kim, my collaborators, and I joke it's because it only has 2 singers and a string quartet. It's really cheap. So companies were like, "Oh, sure, we can do this. It's really cheap, and it's short too. So if they don't like it, we can get rid of our contemporary production really fast with very little expense." But it told the story of a transgender person finding their truth, and that was a pretty unheard of story to have been told when we were writing it 8 years ago, when it premiered 6 years ago. It's not such an unusual story now. So in a way, it's a classic and it's boring. But I had a meeting with a general director of one company somebody who was in his, I believe, education department recommended the piece to him and said, "You really need to do this. I know you're trying to do more new work. And I've done the research, and I think we can bring between 1,500 and 2,000 brand new audience members to see this if we make a reach into the LGBTQ community." And I've done the research here, and the director said, "I don't think my company would be ready for that. We may lose some subscribers."
Wow.
The subject matter back then, 7 years ago, was a little scarier and more taboo than perhaps it is today, although we still have issues. And so I played dumb, and I said, "Well, how many of these donors and subscribers might you lose?" So I watched him. Well, there's Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so and their friends, the so-and-sos. And then, well, she has a lot of money after her husband died, and we're hoping she'll give a big, and there were like 9 people. And I thought, so you're willing to not invite 1,500 new people because you're afraid that you don't know this. I mean, I never said this, but this was what was going on in my mind. You don't know this for a fact, but you're afraid that possibly 9 people might be pissed off and not renew their subscription or not give you an annual gift. But in that 1,500, you might find 11 new people, and you have a net gain, and you've given 1,500 people perhaps their first experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other thing that's not unrelated to this point is by telling the stories that are relevant today, you're inviting in audiences who are coming because of the subject matter, who probably don't know or care about or like opera. And to me, the biggest thrill at the end of an As One production is when a trans person comes up and says, "Thank you for telling my story, but what was really amazing was I've never been to an opera before and I loved it." And an opera subscriber comes up and says, "I wasn't so sure about this. I don't like contemporary opera. And I've never thought about what it must be like to be trans. Thank you." The learning goes both ways. That's why we have to tell these kinds of stories. That's how we get equity and inclusion. And it's up to us guys. You know, we're making the work. You're performing it. We have to put it out there.
Wow. That gave me like goosebumps.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Like that's amazing. Amazing. Well, something, Laura, that you mentioned earlier was the thought of now having the space of everything kind of being closed or either canceled or pushed back or, changed to a digital format. Your question is a very deep question, right? It hits you right in the root of your identity as an artist. So I'm going to introduce the question, and then feel free to read it out aloud and then expand upon it if you like.
Why do I compose? Is it for the act of composing itself, or for the presumed audience, or the collaboration with the interpretive performer, or for the revenue, for all or none? I mean, I personally have really had to think about that. I'm very curious what Jasmine and Jorge have to say.
Mm-hmm. It's a question you really have to digest. You have to digest it and search for those answers.
It's a loaded answer. Okay.
I have an answer.
Yeah, you
I write music because I can't sleep. I'm an insomniac, so
I get it.
that's the truth. It's something to do when I can't sleep, and because that tends to happen often, and tends to happen when I'm stressed, and it tends to happen when there's a lot going on. So when we first went into lockdown in March, I was, just as everyone else, just very concerned, very, in high levels of stress, and worried about my family, worried about my little boy, our work, the industry, the world, etc. And so I just couldn't sleep. And even though I know that the avenues are closing, and there's so much work that everything you read in the bio might never happen. Certainly the pieces for 21, 22, who knows where we will be once we go through. But I still felt like I needed to write, and it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I'm in control of this one thing, of this small little world. And at the end, at the end of a day of writing, or a night of writing, I feel relaxed, and I feel better because I did something. And I think that's the personal reason, and the other reason is that we have to move through this, and we have to, and I think we have to write our way out, and we have to perform our way out of this crisis. I don't think staying at home and waiting for this to go away is going to be productive. And so what do? we do talk shows. You know, probably you wouldn't have had the time to do something like this if you were, you know, working at your regular pace. And so we find the time to talk about things and to you know, and it's been really amazing to see so many colleagues suddenly taking on the airwaves. Why didn't we do that before? And now, you know, how do we keep that going, and how do we make it grow? So, you know, it's, I think, not only about composing, but about just the sheer act of creation and being creative and being musical. So, you know, I think we need to not go above it, but just plow through it. And that's my thought.
Cool thought. So mine is like kind of, it comes with a little story. So a lot of people don't know this about me, but in what year was that? 2012. In 2012, I actually had a voice injury. Mind you, at the time, I solely wanted to be a classical performing artist, like solely, like no jazz, nothing else that I do at all. It was just opera. That's all I want to sing. The end. At the time, and so the injury wasn't as serious as a singer would, you know, make it be, because you know anybody tell you have to be on vocal rest, it's a serious thing. It doesn't matter. Okay, it's like rest what? I don't know. So honestly, it was really a semester of school that I had to like be on voice rest, and it was in. I really felt probably at like one of my lowest points for me at the time. I was 20, so it was like, was I 20? No, I was 19. I was 19. So it was like a really low point for me, because it was just like, I don't know, like, you know, what's next. And I changed my major from architecture to music. So it was like, I just put everything I have into this, and I don't have it anymore. And this is like, it's like the end of the world, you know? And so writing for me, composing for me became out of a need, or like a feeling that I needed to. Like it was like well, if I don't have my voice, well then I can write for somebody else's. Or it was almost like this, I don't know. For me, it was like almost like a doomsday type of thing at first. It was like, well, I better start writing because I can't do nothing else. No, seriously, it was dramatic in its start, but it became something that really was therapeutic for me. And then after the voice injury, because it didn't last that long, like I was just that semester felt like a century to me. But yeah, after the fact though, and I was able to sing. I was fortunate to be at a school that I started, of course, with choral composition because I'm a vocalist. So my first thoughts were, well, let me write for the voice. That was my first thoughts. So I would put stuff together, or, oh, I hear these chords, I want to put it together. I was fortunate to be at a school that actually would perform my music. And so my first composition was actually in Sao Paulo. Yeah, in Brazil. My first composition was premiered in Brazil. Like that's, who says that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it was just like, okay, maybe this is actually a good thing for me. It became that. But shortly after, of course, you know, diving into it and actually getting more serious about it, and you know, writing for instruments and just different things, I was faced with this like feeling of like invalidity. I still didn't call myself a composer for like quite a bit of time after the fact. I mean, I did not I wouldn't refer to myself as that at all. It would just be, oh, I'm a singer, or you know, that's just what I do. But me, it like starting to actually like get into like the field and people asking me to actually write music. That's when I started calling myself a composer. But I also saw how many people didn't look like me doing it. And those that did look like me doing it didn't really have any recognition. They barely were programmed. I mean, even in my own arts education at a historically Black college and university, I didn't see that many people taught to me that look like me. And it does something to your psyche to not see yourself reflected. It does, like, because then it makes you feel invalid. It makes you feel like, oh, I'm doing this as a hobby and it's not a career until I am validated by someone. And that for me, composition for me became more of a visibility type of thing. Like I needed people to see that there are other people like you, or that, you know, I needed people that were like me to see me. Does that make sense? And this like feeling of like, I mean, even I battle it still today. I talk about this all the time with people, like imposter syndrome. I talk about it all the time because it's always this feeling that you're not supposed to be in the spaces you're in, or somebody else would have been better for this, or will they like what I'm giving because, you know, I'm not this person that they've validated several times over. You know what I mean? It's just like that feeling. I feel like at this point I'm right to fight those feelings within myself, but also to show other people that, like, you know, you can do it too. Like that idea. Can you pull the question out one more time? Because I remember it was like a part of it, like the act of proposing itself, presume audience, collaborate. Honestly, all of those, because and revenue, because like, you know, we want to be paid for the things that, you know, we're doing, because that's what takes it from being a hobby. Most of the time, it takes it from being what is a hobby to being, you know, a career. And that's, of course, that comes with the whole validity thing. And it's just like a lot of things that go with that. But yeah, I mean, composition for me really, like, it actually kind of saved me from like a really bad depression in the first place. And then as time has gone on, it's become a vehicle for my voice. Now, granted, I sing now, but that voice injury kind of like sparked so many different things for me. Like I started getting interested in other things that actually were good for me. Just because y'all, nobody could tell me I wasn't gonna be an opera singer. Okay, that's it. I met Elliot and Michael at Gold Glass. Like even in 2017, that's what I was saying. I'm like, that's what I'm doing. And then it was at a time, it was probably kind of there that I was like, I just want to compose. That's what I want to do. Like, that's it. I'll do other things like as like for fun, but composition, that's my career. That's what I want to do. So yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
I love that because like back in 2017, I remember we were coaching in Lime Kiln, and we were just chatting, and I remember you like slipping it in. You're like, oh yeah, I'm a composer too, and you're like kind of shy about it and like didn't want to talk about it. So I love that, you know, like.
And it was crazy. I was in grad school for composition while I was there, so like I still didn't call myself a composer. Like, it was like. I write some music as the thing. But it was because of I kind of had to address some things within myself to be like, okay, why do you feel the need that you need to be like all the way up here to call yourself a composer? Like why do you feel that you have to be highly requested, highly sought after to be a composer? Like, no. And so that after that I was like, you know what? This is what I'm doing. I'm a composer. I will attach that to my name. I'll attach it to my emails. I'll do, you know, whatever I need to do to convince myself that I'm a composer. And then for others to see like, okay, all right, okay, you are a composer.
You are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
My answer.
Beautiful answer. Before you answer, Laura, I actually kind of took this question in myself too, as like, why do I sing? Why do I, or really I did it more specifically, why do I sing opera? Why do I sing classical music? And I had to think about these, and I've been thinking about these questions for a long time because, you know, people will say like, well, if you became a millionaire today, would you stop singing? And you have to think about these kind of things, right? Like, if I became a millionaire today, would I stop pursuing an operatic career? And honestly, I have no idea because I'm not presented with that. And the thing is, I believe that I will never stop singing. I will never stop singing. As long as I can, I will do it because it's my gift. It's a way to share my soul with the world. But as far as, you know, why do I sing? Why do I focus specifically on classical music? You know, I think for me, like Jasmine was saying, it was a space of like visibility. Because I too was like, I don't see really any black opera singers. Like when I was in high school, I was like, oh, if I go, because I wasn't even sure if I wanted to do it in high school, but when I made the decision to go into it, I was like, oh, I want to be the premier black tenor. Like that's what I want to be. And even now, thinking back on that, how sad is it that I was thinking and conditioned to think that there was only one. There's only one at a time.
Yeah.
Right? And that's now as an adult coming into the thoughts that I had growing up of like my own validity, you know, my own um thinking of what the operatic world can be. And where I fit into that and how I can change and mold and make change within our society. So I think yeah, I think it's just I think my answer would be to I sing overall to share my soul. I pursue classical music to break stereotypes.
Mm. Let's see.
But well, Michael, did you want to answer because you are?
I was just gonna say, well, I can't follow that up, but
you are in your own right a composer as well,
right?
So
I'm also a composer. Why do I compose? I mean, the amount that I compose and the frequency that I compose has no like rhyme or reason. Sometimes I really feel like I have something to, you know, create and to contribute. And I really relate with Jorge saying he's an insomniac or like having anxiety. Sometimes it just helps to, you know, play piano, get those things that you're not able to understand or express in words and turn it into music. I mean, that's always been such a good way for me to soothe my soul and express it, like you were saying, Elliot. Yeah. Why do I do it? I mean, I really I don't know if I have an answer for that. I do it when I feel compelled to do it. I do it because it feels really good to create something.
yeah.
Yes.
Because it's
Well done.
That's so valid. Like that's a totally valid answer. You know, and even to not know, I think is also super valid because as we get older, as we become aware of more experiences, all of those things influence us, and maybe the why we do it, the who, the where, the what, the when, they change, but we do it because it usually makes us feel good. What about you, Laura? Why do you compose?
You know, I love everything that everybody said, and I think this is one of those questions that there is no right answer. And I think that during this pandemic period, I was supposed to be on the road with a lot of productions. Of course, didn't happen. And I have a bunch of premiere productions, which have all been postponed and canceled. And I have one that I'm writing now that I don't know, at the end of all of the economic fallout that this will also have, maybe I'll have spent 2.5 years writing this big opera that will just never get done. And I started like, well, what is it, you know? And I think that there is something true for creative artists that the act of making something which wasn't there before, gives us our sense of meaning and being in the world. Like, you're the only one, Jasmine, who could write what you wrote, right? Elliot can only perform with his own soul, giving the nuance to those particular notes with that dynamic marking and that tempo. It's still going to be only you who make it the way you make it. And so it kind of is an existential affirmation for all of us. And that's really humane. And in a bizarre way, it's so generous. What artists do is so generous. And when people throw that, oh, artists are so narcissistic and selfish, to me, like, whoa, it's like completely the opposite. We give it all the time. We're vulnerable and open and sharing, and we torture ourselves, and we're all insomniacs for desire to create something that's beautiful and perfect and transcendent. So the thing that I was thinking about is, like, I have this gift of time now. Everything's being canceled. I can just stay home and write music. I don't have any money, but I have time, and composers need time. That's amazing. But I was feeling a kind of loneliness. And so that's when I started asking, because I still like writing. Like, I can get engrossed in the composing. And I like the storytelling, whether it's an opera or an abstract screenplay. It's still storytelling. So all of that's true. But I was feeling, we're all feeling a certain amount of dread about the state of the world now. But I tried to separate out that to my own particular, me as a composer, trying to find my place. What is it I'm missing the most? And what I really miss, and Elliot, you're the only one amongst this group that I've had the honor and pleasure of working with. What is the hardest is that loss of the live community, where we're in the rehearsal room and we're all vulnerable and we're trying to take these marks on a page that are the best ability to convey something that's bigger than those notes can ever be. And the sharing and the give and take, that's the thing I miss the most. And that's more important than the performance and the premiere. It's a lot more fun than the writing, which is often really hard and torturous. It's that. And that's, to me, about that. That's the community. That's the vulnerable community coming together. And the realization that, we as composers can imagine it, but we're so dependent on you as the interpreters to give it life. And then that exchange to help craft and shape the actual final performance that we all own together, that I regret the loss of that. That's been hard. But everything else, like, I can spend the whole day deciding, should this be a triplet, dotted, a quarter note, eighth note triplet, or should be a dotted quarter note and an eighth note? What difference does it make in the scope of the universe? But it does. It really does.
It does. It really does.
But I think it's that sharing that is why we do it.
I just wanted to say that for my students this semester, I'm going to make all of them write something or arrange something. And if any of my students are listening, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but it's coming. You just have to live with it. But I think I want to do this because I want people to lose the stigma, about writing music. You should just do it. You shouldn't need a reason. And for for performers, just to kind of say, you don't have to be a bronze statue or a concrete figurine in order to write music. You should just do it. So yeah,
I'm gonna make my students do that too. Now that you said that, haha.
So I just want to say, before we move on to our next question, Laura has to run, unfortunately, but I just want to extend a thank you before you head out, to say we appreciate you, and we appreciate what you all, and we appreciate what you're putting out into the world and your contribution to our art form. And we are so honored that you were able to come in and spend some time with us. Though it's a little short, unfortunately.
I'm going to stay and just listen to Jasmine's question being posted, but this was wonderful to share this afternoon with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, Jasmine's question is totally a part of the fabric of our daily lives now. Something that we kind of have to think about on the daily basis as we even just, well, leave our homes, right? And it's something that affects everyone. So, Jasmine, I'm gonna post the question, and I'm going to get you to go ahead and read it for us.
And we've split your question up into
Yeah.
2 parts just so it could all
That's
fit on the
fine.
screen.
That's fine. I always ask 2-pronged questions. All right. Has COVID-19 changed your thinking for the positive, negative, or neutral as it pertains to the future of composition? And go.
That's a big question.
It is.
I am gonna have to leave in a few minutes, so I'm just gonna say we kind of touched on it a little bit. I think that we're all being forced to think about why we're doing what we do, and I think the institutions that give us the space in which to share our work are being forced to think about it as well, down to whether or not they can have people sitting in rows next to each other. So what does that mean? And this format that we're all acknowledging has its technical imperfections right now is one that is able to reach lots more people. And what's that going to do to us? So, despite the horrific challenges that the world is facing now and our creative artist world in music art that we're facing, good will result. Because that's one thing about the human spirit. We make things and we will prevail. And I'm going to have to go. Forgive me. It was just a lovely conversation. I'm so glad I got to meet you, those of you I didn't know, and to see those of you I did again. So thank you.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Laura.
Okay, so yes, so we love Laura. So that's yes, this is a loaded question as well.
I think I want to amend the question and say, has COVID-19 changed your thinking for the positive, negative, or neutral as it pertains to the future of humanity?
Ooh.
That's even.
Why load it even more?
I think it's tied, with a biscuit. Because I think it's tied, who knows? I really hope we come out on the other side, that we are able to move through this period, and on the other side find a better place. We better, because it's getting really, really ugly. So there needs to be hope for this, and it affects us all, as in our little world of the arts, of music, of classical arts or opera or whatever it is. But we write music or we create art to reflect the times, and if the times are dark, then it comes out as well. But I think we're learning a lot, and we suddenly, there's nothing like something so drastic to just adapt in a moment's notice and rethink everything that we've been doing at a personal level, and as a community. So I don't think the world of opera or classical music will be the same after this. That the world will not be the same after this. And I think that my hope is that these spaces that we are finding, that we're occupying, that we'll continue to occupy, and that we'll continue to find and occupy other spaces and reach other people. and really expand the scope. So I think that's the positive aspect of this. And I hope that going back to the decision makers and the opera companies and the producers and the grantees and the grantors and the funders, that they listen to what the community is saying, the community of artists and the community at large, about what they need to see on stage, what they need to encounter, the art that they need to heal and to help us all move collectively through.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Michael, would you like to answer the question?
Yeah, well, yeah, as I was reading it, I mean, it hasn't changed like one way positive or one way negative, or just like in one direction. I feel like it's just a jumble of positive and negative and neutral feelings. I mean, there are certainly plenty of positive things that have come out of this time, and certainly many negative things. But I think the most positive thing is that, you know, we all have time to reflect on what's really important for us as a community, the classical music community. We can reflect on what is going to help us once, as you say, Jorge, as we go through the COVID-19 period, and how can we help our country, our world, to, you know, strip itself of all of these maladies that have affected it for so long, that are, you know, part of its system. It's part of how our country was formed. You know, still affects us today, and we're waking up and seeing that, you know, these things need to change, or it's going to be our demise. So positive and negative.
Or it's going to be our demise.
Negative that, like, you know, there's no motivation to do anything, because, you know, I mean, not having connection with real human beings, besides like maybe one or two or three people that are part of your home unit or family, is really detrimental to, I mean, I can only speak to my experience, but to my mental health, and that, you know, that affects so many other things, motivation included. And you know, so as a composer, because I mean, the original question was, how does it pertain to the future of composition? Yeah, there's, I guess that could like inspire some composers to write and to feed off of that that ugly reality, those feelings that come from this. But I think those feelings also can, you know, dampen your desire to even want to create.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What about you, Jasmine?
For me personally, I'm in the same place, Michael, of feeling, I've had moments of feeling positivity. I have moments of negativity, and I have moments of neutrality. I honestly feel like, I mean, 2020 has been such a negative year anyway, that I feel that only positive things can come out of it, because, you know, this year has been much. It just has. So I think it's for people, I mean, the fact that we have to stay home, like the fact that we cannot just go out and distract ourselves with things that probably really don't matter in the first place, I think gives us time to think.
Right.
Honestly, truly, when the pandemic hit, I'll say that, when it hit, I was overwhelmed with so much stuff. Like, I had my days were planned out probably for the rest of the year. And I knew I wasn't going to have a break, and I knew I wasn't going to have a break, and I was just like, well, here it comes. Like, it was just like I was just bracing myself for, like, you know, just that feeling of overwhelmed. Like, it was a lot. And then once it came, and then everything was closed, including the school I work in. Like, I was just like, oh. I was a break, but not that kind of a break. Like, I was shocked, but especially when we didn't go back. That's when it hit me in May. I was like, oh wait, we're really not. Oh no, like, oh no, it's done. Oh, we're all staying home. Okay, for a while. I don't know. I'm an ambivert, so I can drive in crowds. I can drive by myself. It's really a thing. It's either one, I'm okay. So for me, writing in this time, it's giving me a little more time to, like, explore things I've never done in composition, like extended piano techniques, or you know, just things like things that I just haven't done, and I'm like, well, why not? Like, try it out. Go ahead, go for it. And also in this time, I'm grateful that I've been receiving more commissions right now, which is strange because we don't have anything to do, and yet, yeah. So I have neutral feelings for very little. Actually, I have neutral feelings for very little. It's either negative or positive. Like, hot or cold. Will we be back in these theaters and, you know, on the stages? Yes, we will. How will it look? Could be grim. Don't know. How will audiences feel about paying for tickets to potentially expose themselves to viruses? Could be grim. I don't know. All I know is we are now exploring things that we have not done. Like, overall, I think in composition, just in music as a whole, we're exploring things that we have not done, including talking about our feelings. Wow, who'd have thought? Like, we don't. And for us to be such vulnerable, like, people, it's weird that we don't get to talk about it. And so now we're talking about it, and people are like, dang, I thought I was alone on that, or I thought I was alone that felt that way. And so now I think for humanity, for humanity, I think it is allowing people to see themselves within each other.
Wow.
So I think that's
Wait, can you say that again? Say that again.
Okay.
It's allowing
for people to see themselves within each other. I think that's so important because, like, we are artists and we often view ourselves in our own little sector of art. Like, oh, I'm a singer. I'm an instrumentalist. I'm a composer. Like, I'm a conductor. We see ourselves in a sector. But when we start to talk about the things that we all often go through, it's like, oh, wow, wait, you're like me. I didn't even know. And so now I feel like art from now on, it's going to reflect a little bit more of each other, of humanity. Okay.
Oh my God.
I think so. I mean, I think so. And I think we're starting to think about things that we've been doing that just isn't right. So that, you know, we're just thinking. We're thinking.
A new age of enlightenment. People are coming out of their kind of thinking, you know, old school thinking, and starting to think more in a humanitarian way than a self-reflective one. I think.
I think it could be a second renaissance. I do believe it.
How has your thinking changed, Elliot, since COVID-19?
Well, I think I'm also a mixed bag of, like, I mean, to be quite frank, I thankfully was able to get the PUA, right? And as an artist, a steady stream of income is almost impossible. And for me, I personally have been the most financially stable that I've been in a very long time.
Mm.
And it's been very conflicting actually, mentally thinking about like, okay, well if this wouldn't have happened, where would I have been artistically, but also where would I have been financially, but also where would I have been with my interpersonal relationships, and where would I have been, it's just so many things that have, thankfully, I'm very privileged that things in my life have been changing for the better. um and and having this span and break and just kind of going, because I've been doing that, since elementary school. You start school and you go to school, and then I did, college with no break, and then I went and did my master's with no break, and I went and started performing, and it's just like constantly you're just going, which is a part of life, right? That's kind of like the way the life goes. But to have this extended period of time where I've had to think about, what do I want to contribute to the world outside of just opera? What do I have to contribute to humanity? What do I have to contribute to other people and the relationships that I foster and want to develop? And it's been really great thinking. Something that you mentioned was, um, we get stuck in these, like, I'm a singer, I'm a composer, I'm a conductor, right? And like for me, it's been a time of like, I'm a singer, but however, I'm also this, and I can use my skills here, and I can use my knowledge there, and I can use my experience here. And it's been really fascinating to grow so much within myself in such a quick time period, to the point where I'm like, okay, well, thank God I feel financially stable a little bit, compared to the norm working as a young artist. Well, you're there for the summer and you got gigs in between, you know what I mean? And if you don't, then you're working, 9 to 5 retail jobs. I mean, that is the reality of being a young artist in America in 2020. That's the truth. We have to figure out other ways to support ourselves. And I think now people are starting to realize you have to have other skills other than just being able to sing, and just being able to sing well.
Right.
You have to have skills that will last you through within all different aspects of your life. And for me, that's probably the most positive thing that's come out of this, is having more of a open vision, instead of being so like, this is where I should be and this is where I need to go. And like, if it doesn't happen that way, then what? Then does that mean it doesn't mean your life is over? You know what I mean? Like, there's so much more space in this world and in this universe than we give ourselves credit for. And for me, it's brought that out a lot. So I guess, yeah, mostly positive, also negative compared to how things are treated here in our wonderful country. Um, but it's also, through that negativity, it's put a call and a charge in me to be more of an activist, whereas I was before, but not as much as I am now, and not as knowledgeable, and not I wasn't able to convey my thoughts on things, and convey action against injustices. So yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Y'all know y'all were talk show hosts?
Yeah, I had no clue. I had no clue. But I learned that I have a knack for hosting, and I enjoy it. I find it fascinating and invigorating, and I really love it. So that's a cool thing that's come out.
Okay. New avenues of revenue.
Right. Okay.
That's right.
Well, we're about to wind down, but before we finish, we have a lighter question. That's a secondary question from Miss Barnes, um, which is, well, it's a little bit lighter. It's still, dealing with our issues, but it's what can I read your question?
Yeah.
Is that okay? So, what unused elements can, I'll say, you all as composers use to adapt as potential permanent changes to live performance increases? And Jasmine, would you like to expound on that a little bit?
Okay. So like, trying to think. All right. So we have like the same. It's kind of a part of the last question where, all right. So we have this pandemic going on, and there are new things that we haven't tried just yet. To make sure that the success of the art moves forward. And so, like, I guess I'm more so asking, like, what haven't we done that we can actually use to adapt to? Because, I mean, we know that some of these changes are going to be permanent. Like, we know that we're never going to go back to normal per se, whatever that is. Like, you know what I mean? As far as like, sharing drinks off each other. That's probably never going to happen again. Okay.
I won't.
I already know. People like to share drinks. That's not happening anymore. Okay. Or like, I mean, I spent quite a bit of time playing the trumpet. And one of the first things that you do when your spit valves get a little full, what you do? Blow it on the floor. Can't do that no more. What we gonna do? I'm just saying. Okay, anyway, some things that we haven't done yet, though, to like adapt to some of these like potential permanent changes. Like we don't know how large audiences can be in the future, or we don't know. But what are some things that we haven't done yet that we can do, or could potentially do? And that's out of the box thinking.
So I think that I don't think streaming is going to go away. Actually, I think that's going to be the first big change. Even if we are able to go back onto stages tomorrow, which is not possible, but whenever we go back to stages, streaming is still going to be a thing. It's going to be with us, and I think that's a good thing. We're actually able to reach more people this way, and to Laura's point a couple of hours ago about providing access to people. This is a real way to get friends and people who are out of our to get engaged and to be involved. I'm looking at the comments in the chat, and my friend Emilio, who I haven't seen in 15 years, is in the chat. It's great, and that sort of thing would not be possible if we're not occupying the spaces and making it more accessible. So I think that's going to stay. And my recommendation for musicians and the classical arts, singers, get comfortable with the mics, because they're not going to go away. You don't need them. I know that. We know that. You don't need them, but you don't need them to project. But I think that they will become more useful and more ubiquitous. And so getting comfortable with the technology. Apart from getting my students this semester to write their own songs and arrangements, they're also going to have to produce their own videos, because that's where we are. So we're now all in the business of making videos, and I don't think that's going to change.
Totally. I had a suggestion. No, I'm not a composer. It's not in my wheelhouse. I'm glad that there are composers out there.
This pertains to you as a performer. So
yeah, so Well, mine is specifically to, and it's an idea. Um, I think something that can be born, something that I have not necessarily seen as a element within composition, is creating works to scale. So creating like operas, right, that can be scaled down to, I mean, yes, we do that still. Like, we can have like of opera and have like either a 20-person chorus or a 60-person chorus and have this amount, whatever. But really like having it to the point where it can be 2 to 4 people to 15, 16 people. Being, putting your creativity like really out of the box to the point where you really are able to like say, well, this week we can do this with 4 people, and in a month we can do this with 10. And being able to interchange those things and kind of use them as ways to expand and then bring it back in if need be, because of how flux, right, and how malleable our interactions are at this point. So I think that's a charge to composers out there to think about creating works that stay super malleable even into the future. And then that also will help. Laura was talking about as one, and how it's very, one of the reasons that it may be done is because it's easily producible. And to start thinking on scales of, okay, well, if I'm with this company, they have this budget, we can have this many people, and if I'm with this company, we can have this, but my work is still being performed wherever it needs to be performed. So that's a charge to the composers and what you're making in the future.
Definitely.
I love to put little things out there to make people think.
No, but I think you're absolutely right. I think that there's just no, grand opera is super expensive, and it's exciting. I get it, but not all of it really. But there's you have to make the works that can be performed, and that are, and I don't think that we're heading into a recession, or we're in the middle of a recession. So and unless we get a sort of an influx in the way that happened with FDR, where the federal government is pumping in resources to create and make art accessible, and understanding the importance of art in a society. But unless that happens, we are going to need to really scale down, and do the works that I had a friend who used to say, we need less houses of culture and more culture in your houses. So I think,
wow.
I think we need to figure out a way on how to make it for our communities. I think we need to take over green spaces and parks. So how do we produce opera in parks, in the national parks, in the in a way that is healthy? What is healthy for us to do right now, and how do we create work that fits in that? Yeah, I don't know.
What about you, Jasmine?
I think we have a lot to learn from art forms that have sustained themselves for quite a bit of time now. What I mean by that, popular music is just what's popular. We understand that could that could span many things. But one thing that all the other art forms that people listen to like kind of on a regular basis, one of the things that they understand is the significance of technology. I think in opera we understand the significance of technology on the stage, as it pertains to stage, as it pertains to like tech and lighting and all that good stuff like that. But okay, like was already said, we need to know how to use recording software. We need to know how to use video um, technology. We need to we these are things that we just need to know how to do. Like some of the things that people would view as invalid, like a kid making a beat on GarageBand. Okay, you might view that as invalid, but that's innovative because that beat can now last as a soundbite for quite a bit of time. Like, and a lot of live performances aren't even recorded. So let's talk about like we can learn from these already existing art forms. And collaboration, I think, is likely to happen in the future. I think that would be super important. Yeah, I just think there needs to be some type of merging in thought and in collaboration, and a real collaboration, not you stay in your lane, I stay in my lane, and we put it together type of collaboration, but more like, what do you do? How can I put that into what I'm doing? This is what I'm doing. Let me show you how to put it into what you're doing. So yeah.
And how do they influence each other and what?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think too that we tend to forget like that. So when I first went into classical singing, it was because my voice fit that. Right, like that was where my specific instrument, that's the lane that it was going toward. Like I was not R&B, like kind of like, no, all of the other genres developed later as I got older. But because I was like in a boys choir and that's how I was trained, like that's where the voice went. So I think that, and like you were saying, real collaboration, not thinking that we need to like put, have singers who are classically trained then sing like jazz standards to make it like, a thing, but like use your full instrument and use the full range of your instrument to create and to be creative. I think that's going to be a major switch that happens.
I foresee more electronic composition for the record. Or that included into live composition.
Right. Totally. So we are going to end with a question from one of our audience members. And it is a question from Karen Slack. Miss Slack. The
Karen Slack.
So the question is, what kind of projects or productions would you like organizations to mount in the future? We kind of touched on a little bit of this, but these are kind of like last remarks. What would you like to see happen with organizations in the future? What type of productions?
Well, I think this is probably implied in the question, but new projects, new productions.
And
also, I mean, she says, would you like organizations to mount in the future? I mean, if the organizations aren't going to mount them and you want to see it out there in the future, put it together. I mean, this is the time. You don't need an organization to be able to make something happen, especially in this digital age. I mean, it will help. But
wow, yeah, that's so true.
I personally, now this is not technically a project per se. I want to see more talks like this from organizations, like actual. Oh, I want to know what y'all want to do.
Okay, I want to know what y'all want to do. Okay.
So, in the past, before the pandemic, right? A lot of new works would be performed, and then nothing really would be talked about it or why, or unless it was like a specific interview. But more so, it would. We don't have these talks now. Granted, we could use these streaming services just to do the talking part, and then the performance be for performance. Okay, I understand that. But mainly, I I ultimately just want to just see more community involvement, because that's just, I personally think, I don't know, more like I would love to see, okay, I'm putting this out there. I would love to see a composition that was written by students of a particular school in a low income community. Like something that okay, we collaborated together and worked and showed like, well, what ideas do you come up with? And then we figure out how to transcribe it or whatever the case, and like put it together. It doesn't even have to be an opera. It could just be a piece or just something to show for like, see, they're learning this and then explaining like what they thought about the process, why they liked it or why they didn't like it or whatever the case, but getting them kind of like involved in the process of producing what is on the stage, because a lot of them don't even know. And I know for me personally, when I was younger, I didn't even know composition really was a thing. Like, like I heard music and I knew the people like created it. I just didn't think of it as an actual tangible thing that I could physically do. Like imagine a 7-year-old being able to say, "Oh, I wrote that line," or and what? Like,
yeah,
I would love to see that.
Yeah, I love that because it also shows like I mean, like I said, I was in a boys choir, and I learned like about theory, but I never thought like, you're singing these compositions that are from the 1800s, and so it makes you think, and obviously more modern things as well, but it in turn, doing something like that makes you think, wow, like you can do it now, and people do it now. So if there are any organizations out there, you have wonderful composers, okay, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. And what about you, Jorge? What kind of things would you like?
I mean, I have a list of things that I want to do. I keep a list. I check it twice. But some things that I want to do in the near future, I want to write in Spanish again. I really haven't written anything in Spanish in, since grad school, and so I need to go back to that. And there's a long list of plays and pieces in Spanish that I would like to adapt. So coming back to that, but I think what I'd like to see for myself and for colleagues is, when we think about contemporary opera, people even the great composers of our times have one, maybe two. There are some very fortunate to have 5 or 6, and I would like, I want to do 15 or 20. So I want to do one every year until I can't. So and I hope I have more than 20 years. Okay, so a few more. But I think I want. I'm looking to do a type of opera that moves in a more theatrical way, that is more dialogue based, and that it just is more dynamic, and that's where my head is, and and I do electronics, so work with technology. It's also I've been doing that for some time. But yeah, I want to do one day when we're able to go back to the stages. I want to do the big Latin American classics, like like Eva Luna, or I would love to do Como Agua para Chocolate, or like the big sweeping epic Latin American novels.
Wow.
Maybe one day.
That would be amazing.
Please do. Like, do it.
I say you all can do it. And well, I guess so that can be a part of the change as well. So maybe as performers, get telling our ideas more to composers and telling our ideas to organizations and seeing if they can make the connections happen as well, right? Like maybe Oh, well, hey, thanks, Karen. So maybe thinking in a way of true collaboration through the company, through the composer, through the singer, through everyone really actually coming together to make something happen more than like, I'm getting hired in to sing this. And they got commissioned to do that. And now we're putting it all together instead of, seeing more of that whole full communication because we have the access, right? We're doing it right now. We have the access and we are so fortunate to be in a time that we are able to really have conversations with people that we may not have ever had the conversation with before, and to be able to sit here and speak, though we may not be in person, but we're still communicating, we're still showing our appreciation for each other and for this amazing art form and for art in general. And it's such an amazing blessing, I think, to be able to share these spaces with artists of all different types and spaces. So yeah, it's great. It's great. But so well, I guess we should wrap up. What's the tea with ACP for today? Okay, wrap up. and we so appreciate you all being here today, and we
Yes.
just want to say thank you for sharing your voices. Thank you for sharing your ideas, being collaborators, being open. Um, we just want to say thank you.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jorge. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure being here. Pleasure to meet you, Jasmine, Elliot. I hadn't met you, and so yeah, let's do it again.
Awesome.
I would
Yeah.
love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's work on getting a TV studio to put this.
Hey.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you all.
Yeah.